We're in the midst of a pandemic, and it's no surprise that tons of TTRPG enthusiasts are moving their games online these days. But even with that push, there's still so many people who just aren't feeling it because it's not, frankly, the same. I GM'd and played more than my fair share of games online before quarantine hit and since. There are lots of tips and tricks I've collected over the years, and I think now is the perfect time to share with you my advice for how best to take advantage of moving your Dungeons & Dragons game online. Reduce distractions. When you're online, you're a millisecond away from doing literally anything else. Setting the rule that everyone is going to shut down Facebook and only have open the relevant windows and applications required to play the game has made a huge difference on how focused everybody is and how engaged they are with the story. You need to decide what kind of video and voice applications you're going to use. While it's totally valid for people to want to play these games over voice chat, we can't ignore the fact that 75% of all communication is nonverbal. If you're wondering why playing online doesn't feel the same as playing in person, this could be a huge reason why. Another trick is to make sure you're looking into the lens of your camera when your character, or if you're the GM and you're an NPC, is speaking directly to another character. A lot of times in video calls, we get distracted by looking down at our screen and seeing what everybody is doing. But every once in a while, you need to make sure that you take the time to make a connection with them. Now that we've talked about why you want to include video, we should talk about which types of video resources you can use. Discord has the advantage of having a saved chat for everybody in a group call where you can pin different group notes that might be helpful later on in the game, or you can pin your schedule for the game. Any number of things can be saved. On the other hand, not everybody wants to use Discord, and for people who have a lot of draws on their attention, it seems really annoying to have to add another tool into the mix. If you use Facebook, odds are you use Facebook Messenger, and if that's a place where a lot of people are already communicating, it's more likely that they'll see the messages that come through without having to open a separate app for it. One thing that I really enjoy about it is that even when my camera is active on Facebook video call, I can just move it to the side, so the only faces that I'm really actively paying attention to and seeing are the other people at the table. Another tool that's great for playing TTRPGs online is, of course, Zoom. You can share your screen. It's a very low draw on the CPU. That being said, there are a lot of other questionable practices that Zoom employs. These are all tools. You choose the ones that work best for you at your table. I'm just here to show you what's in the box. What's in the box? Decide if theater of the mind is going to work well for your game. I really think pretty intricately about character placement and spell placement and how I want layer actions to work in the environment if I'm building some sort of combat as a GM, and I just can't seem to contain that in my mind wholly. You kind of have to be willing to give some of that control up and be a little bit more flexible. Theater of the mind, for me, only really works with low-level situations and in one-shots. So let's talk about virtual tabletop tools. Are you going to be using Roll20? Are you going to be using Foundry, Fantasy Grounds? If you're playing a Paizo game, are you going to be using Hero Lab? You could even be using the D&D Beyond Encounter Creator. There are tons of options available to you. That in itself can be pretty overwhelming, but one of the best ways to choose what's going to work for the group is ask everybody what they're familiar with. Unsurprisingly, you should kind of focus on what your GM is most comfortable with. Spoilers, they're going to be doing the most work on this platform, preparing all the fun for the rest of the table. And if they ask for your input or suggestions, then feel free to bring those up. That being said, once the GM has settled on one of those options that the group has brought forward, it is the GM's job to make sure that everybody is comfortable on that platform. Players really build frustration during that first session if things don't go fairly smoothly. If they're caught up in the moment, they can't perform their character's functions or find their character info where they think it is, people stop feeling agency. Even if there's somebody else at the table who's like, you go here and here and here and then click this, it takes away that personal responsibility for their character, and then everything just sort of falls apart. Make sure they're comfortable before you actually sit down to play. Do yourself a favor and just add in that session like 0.5 to make sure that everybody understands how to use the tools at your disposal. Before we move on, I just want to say thank you so much for watching this video. I love chatting about all things role-playing games online, so I hope that you will take a second to like this video, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get notified every time I upload a new video. Let's get on with it. Your prep is going to take longer. Every campaign that I've ever done in a virtual space has always had that clunky first run. If you can make it through that successfully, odds are that your game will continue without issue. But if everything falls apart that first game, it's really hard to pick up that lost ground. Everybody needs to realize that it's not as simple as just showing up. You need to make sure that you have a good enough mic and video camera so that people can hear and see and understand what you're saying and contributing to the story. GMs are going to need to put in the extra time to understand how to drag in tokens, move them between layers, figure out different macros. All sorts of tools are available, and you don't have to use all of them, but you have to have a command of the ones that you're going to use so that you can teach the players how to use them too. You also need a firm understanding of whether your PC can handle all the tools it takes to play online. Even one Chrome tab open makes a huge draw on your CPU, and when you have Roll20 up, plus Zoom, plus any number of other things, it can be absolutely maddening. So you want to make sure that you test that out before you agree to for sure play in a game, because you might find out that you need to get a different computer or you don't have the tools necessary for you to play comfortably online. One tip that I have specifically for if you're using Roll20 is to make sure that you have shut off broadcasting video and sound and just use a different app with a lower draw on the CPU. So use Facebook or use Discord or Zoom as your communication central, whereas you're just using the maps and the tokens and the tools and the macros involved with Roll20. Whether you're a GM or a player, keeping yourself open to criticism and suggestions from your fellow players is going to be the difference between having a somewhat frustrating initial experience that sort of devolves and breaks down after a little while, to finding a group of people who are going to be your rock. The rock that gets you through this fucking awful experience that we're all suffering through right now. Make sure that people know they can reach out between sessions to each other or to the GM. It's just so important that everybody is able to be vulnerable with each other at the table. I'm just going to close by saying the relationships that I have with the people that I play D&D with are some of the most special and cherished relationships I have in my life, and I just have no doubt that I would not be able to be a sane person during all of this if I hadn't made the effort to move in-person games online. I know it's not for everybody, but it's just such an incredible release when you get to do it with people that you care about. Phrasing. And if this video only inspires one person who's been totally against it this entire time to give it one more shot, then I think I will have done my job. So get out there and live your quest life. Bye, guys.